कैसे हैं आप लोग। बहुत बहुत स्वागत है आपका अनअकैडमी यूपीपीएससी एंड यूपीपीएससी इंडिया लार्जेस्ट लर्निंग प्लेटफॉर्म। आज हम लोग बैंकिंग रिफॉर्म्स के जो जहां पे कल समाप्त किया था उसके आगे की चीजें देखेंगे। जैसा कि मैंने आपको कल भी बताया कि ये बहुत ही इंपॉर्टेंट टॉपिक है बैंकिंग रिफॉर्म्स का, और ये काफी डायमेंशंस हम लोगों ने कल टच कर लिए थे। आज उसके बचे हुए डायमेंशंस हम लोग टच करने जा रहे हैं और इसको समझने का प्रयास करते हैं कि बैंकिंग रिफॉर्म्स कहाँ तक हैं और क्या क्या चीज़ें बैंकिंग रिफॉर्म्स में हम लोगों को देखनी है। तो अगर अभी तक आपने अनअकैडमी ऐप को इंस्टॉल नहीं किया है तो आप अनअकैडमी ऐप को इंस्टॉल करिए। जब आप इसे इंस्टॉल करेंगे तो आपको ढेर सारी स्पेशल क्लासेस मिलेंगी। उन स्पेशल क्लासेस को आप देख सकते हैं। उन स्पेशल क्लासेस में जो भी इम्पोर्टेंट टॉपिक्स हैं, ठीक है, वो आप देखिए। जो भी क्लासेस हैं वो आप देखिए, और जो भी क्विज़ेज़ कराई जाती हैं उन क्विज़ेज़ में आप पार्टिसिपेट करिए। अगर आप क्विज़ेज़ में पार्टिसिपेट करेंगे तो डेफ़िनेटली आपको बहुत ज़्यादा फ़ायदा होगा। बहुत ही महत्वपूर्ण क्लासेस हैं, बहुत ही महत्वपूर्ण क्विज़ेज़ हैं, बहुत ही इम्पोर्टेंट क्लासेस हैं। इन क्लासेस को आप डिटेल में करिए, क्लासेस को आप ध्यान से करिए, और इन सब क्लासेस के बारे में आप ध्यान से करिए। These are Unacademy advantages: anytime, anywhere, live and recorded sessions at your convenience. At your convenience. Get access to best multiple correspondence courses such as pedagogy with academic calendar. Get access to best multiple correspondence courses, structures, pedagogy in sync with the academic calendar. इवेंट लाइक वर्कशॉप, स्ट्रेटजी सेशंस। ये जीएस पेपर 1 की टेस्ट सीरीज है। इस टेस्ट सीरीज को आप ध्यान से दीजिए, बहुत ही महत्वपूर्ण टेस्ट सीरीज है। 3 एमसीक्यू बेस्ड टेस्ट सीरीज है, ड्यूरेशन 2 आवर्स, 200 मार्क्स का प्रश्न होगा। और इस प्रश्न को आप ध्यान से देखिए, समझिए, और इन क्वेश्चंस को जब आप करेंगे तो डेफिनेटली आपको बहुत ज़्यादा फायदा होगा। अगर आप इन क्वेश्चंस को करते हैं और आप अच्छी रैंक लेके आते हैं तो डेफिनेटली आपको स्कॉलरशिप भी मिलेगी। और उस स्कॉलरशिप के माध्यम से आप अनअकैडमी की फ्री स्कॉलरशिप पा सकते हैं। दीज आर बैच कोर्सेज। तो चलिए हम लोग पढ़ना स्टार्ट करते हैं। हाँ, इसमें रैंक 1 पे, हाँ शिवा सही कह रहा हूँ, रैंक 1 पे 100% स्कॉलरशिप मिलेगी। रैंक 2 और 3 पे आपको 50% स्कॉलरशिप मिलेगी, 1 ईयर एंड अब ड्यूरेशन सब रैंक। कुछ चीजें जो बहुत ही महत्वपूर्ण है आप इनको। तो आज हम लोग बेसिकली जिस चीज को करने जा रहे हैं वो हमारे लिए बहुत ही महत्वपूर्ण है। जैसा मैंने आपको पहले ही बताया कि इसमें हम आज बैंकिंग रिफॉर्म्स पढ़ने जा रहे हैं। बैंकिंग रिफॉर्म्स, तो आइए इन चीजों को समझने का प्रयास करते हैं कि बैंकिंग रिफॉर्म्स क्या हैं और किस तरीके से हमारे प्री और मेंस यूपीपीसीएस के लिए बैंकिंग रिफॉर्म्स बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट। बैंकिंग पार्ट 2। बैंकिंग रिफॉर्म्स पार्ट 2 इसको समझने का प्रयास करिए आप लोग। ठीक है? तो अगर हम बैंकिंग रिफॉर्म्स की बात करें तो अगर हम बैंकिंग रिफॉर्म्स की बात करें तो कल हम लोगों ने कुछ बेसल नॉर्म्स की बात कर ली थी। याद करिए आप, याद करिए कल हमने बेसल नॉर्म्स की बात कर ली और उसी के आगे अब हम धीरे धीरे चीजों को समझने का प्रयास करें। तो व्हाट डू वी मीन बाय यूनिवर्सल बैंकिंग? यूनिवर्सल बैंकिंग क्या है? सार्वभौमिक बैंकिंग क्या है? तो यूनिवर्सल बैंकिंग refers to those banks that offer a wide range of financial services beyond the commercial banking functions like mutual fund, merchant banking, credit card, retail loan, housing finance, auto loan, investment banking, insurance, etc. It is most common in European countries. Benefit to banks from universal banking are that since they have competence in the related areas, they can reduce average cost and thereby improve spreads difference in the cost of borrowing and return of lending by diversifying. Many financial services are interlinked activities, जैसे insurance, stock broking and lending. A bank can use its instrument in one activity to exploit the other. To the customers, one-stop shopping saves transaction costs. However, one drawback is that universal banking leads to a loss in specialization. There is also the problem of the bank indulging in too many risky activities. तो ये बैंकिंग की हम लोग बात कर रहे हैं। ये कल हमने क्लास कहाँ पे समाप्त की थी जरा एक बार बताइएगा, क्योंकि कल वाला वीडियो आप में से काफी लोगों ने देखा है, डिफ्रेंशिएट किया है। तो कल हमने क्लास कहाँ पे समाप्त की थी? शायद आरबीआई के काम देख लिए थे और उसके बाद हम लोग ओके हम लोग ने लास्ट में आरआरबीज देखा था। आरआरबीज चलिए ठीक है। इसके बाद कोर बैंकिंग सोल्यूशन, इट कैन बी डिफाइंड एज ए सोल्यूशन दैट इनेबल्स बैंक्स टू ऑफर ए मल्टीट्यूड ऑफ कस्टमर सेंट्रिक सर्विस ऑन ए 24/7 basis from a single location, supporting retail as well as corporate banking activity. Globally systematic important banks GSIBs. During the global financial crisis of 2008, it was observed that problems faced by certain large and highly interconnected financial institutions hampered the orderly functioning of the financial system, which in turn negatively impacted the real economy. Therefore, a need was felt for regulatory policies aimed at reducing the probability of failure of systematically important banks and the impact of the failure of these banks. The Basel Committee on Banking Supervision came out with a framework in 2011 for identifying the global systematically important banks and the magnitude of additional loss absorbency capital requirement applicable to the GSI. Domestically systematically important banks. According to the RBI, some banks become systematically important due to their size, cross-jurisdictional activities, complexity, and lack of interconnection. Banks whose assets exceed 2% of GDP are considered part of this group. The RBI stated that should such a bank fail, there would be significant disruption to the essential services they provide to the banking system and the overall economy. The too big to fail tag also indicates that in case of distress, the government is expected to support these banks. Due to this perception, these banks enjoy certain advantages in funding. It also means that these banking have a different set of policy measures regarding systematically risk and moral hazard issues. तो ये इंपॉर्टेंट चीजें हैं जो कुछ चीजें आपको स्वयं ही समझनी थी, कुछ चीजें आपको स्वयं ही देखनी थी। तो दोनों इंपॉर्टेंट हैं। ग्लोबल सिस्टमेटिकली बैंक ठीक है। DSIBs are closely monitored by the central bank to ensure their better functioning and prevent the indulgence of such banks in any grey areas such as money laundering, etc. They are domestically identified by central banks of a country and globally by Basel committees on banking. Need for SIB status. There can be reckless practices on part of these banks like increased risk taking, reduction in its market discipline, creation of competitiveness distortion. All this can increase the probability of distress in the future. Therefore, it is required that SIB be subjected to additional policy measures to deal with the systematic risk and moral hazards. तो एडिशनल पॉलिसी मेजर्स तो इसकी बहुत इंपॉर्टेंस है नहीं, वैसे एडिशनल पॉलिसी मेजर्स मैंने आपको बताए हुए हैं. रीजनल रूरल बैंक्स regulated by national banks for NABARD and rural development NABARD. RIB need to maintain SLR and CRR at the same purchase as the other. The Cabinet Committee on Economic Affairs has given its maintenance of the capital. अब इंपॉर्टेंट है कि डिफरेंशिएटेड बैंक्स क्या हैं. व्हाट डू मीन बाय डिफरेंशिएटेड बैंक? Differentiated banks. There are two kinds of banking license that are granted by the Reserve Bank of India. तो दो तरीके के बैंकिंग लाइसेंस हैं. जैसे एक है यूनिवर्सल बैंक लाइसेंस एंड डिफरेंशिएटेड बैंक लाइसेंस. डिफरेंशिएटेड बैंक इन्हें नीचे बैंक भी बोलते हैं. नाइस बैंक, NICHE, नाइस बैंक. NICHE को क्या बोलेंगे भाई? NICHE को अगर हम देखें तो इसको हम क्या बोलेंगे? निश्चय, निश्चय बैंक. निश्चय निश बैंक, निश बैंक. तो niche बैंक इनको कहते हैं are banks that serve the needs of a certain demographic segment of a population. They are licensed by the RBI to provide specific banking services and products. Main aim for giving license to these banks is to promote financial inclusion and payments. Differential bank licensing was implemented in 2015. Small finance bank and payments banks are example of differentiated banks. Differentiated banks are distinct from universal banks. The commercial bank like UPSSC at their infused and niche segment. Niche bank typically target a specific market and tailor the bank's operation to this target market. The differentiation could be on account of capital requirements, so scope of activity is as they offer a limited range of services. निश बैंक क्या है? निश बैंक या डिफरेंशिएटेड बैंक. डिफरेंशिएटेड बैंक की बात हम लोग कर रहे हैं. तो डिफरेंशिएटेड बैंक में दो तीन सवाल आ सकते हैं. तो डिफरेंशिएटेड बैंक्स में दो बैंक्स हैं, एक स्मॉल बैंक। देयर आर टू काइंड ऑफ बैंकिंग लाइसेंस। The concept of differentiated banks is not entirely new. In fact, in a sense, the urban cooperative banks, the primary agriculture credit societies, the regional rural bank, and local area banks could be considered as a differentiated bank as they operate in local areas. But the present concept of differentiated bank can be first discussed in 2007. Thereafter, the concept was once again discussed in a paper, Banking Structure in India, brought by Reserve Bank in August 2013. RBI granted in principle approval to 11 entities for setting up payment banks in August 2015 and 10 SFC in September 2015. So, what are the basically payments banks? Payments banks were introduced by the RBI for promoting financial inclusion and facilitating payment and remittance flows. They are different from the conventional universal banks, and the payments bank can concentrate on only two types of activities: accepting demand deposit and facilitating payments. The main target for payment bank will be mitigant laborers, Bhugtan bank, self-employed, low-income household, etc., as they will offer low-cost saving accounts and remittance services, so that those who now transact only in cash can take their first step into formal banking system. They will be cashing in on mobile technology and applications to cater to the various services they will be offering, and with the use of technology, they can be cost efficient. Payment banks will be acting as add-on to the already established bank rather than their competitor. They will enhance financial inclusion by providing a small saving account payment services. They can accept demand deposit with a maximum balance of Rs 1 lakh per individual. They can issue ATM debit cards but cannot issue credit cards. Can act as banking corresponding of another bank and can offer internet banking. Sell mutual fund insurance facilities. They cannot indulge in lending. CRR is applicable. SRRs of 75% comprising of up to 1 year maturity G-Secret bills and the remaining in deposit with other scheduled commercial. Payments bank can also play a significant role in implementing the government direct bank transfer scheme, where subsidies on healthcare, education, and gas are paid directly to beneficiaries. लो, अब इनके चैलेंजेस हैं कि लो रेवेन्यू है, required to invest a minimum of 75% of demand deposit balance into government securities. तो डिपॉजिट से अर्न नहीं कर पाते. बैंक already offering most services that payments bank can enhance for payment bank to offer a new and differentiated proposition will not be easy. Other saving instruments like Kisan Vikas Gold Bond have better returns than payment banks. Experience from Jandan Yojana has shown that such no-frill accounts have remained dormant, thus affecting the viability of the bank. तो स्कोप ऑफ एक्टिविटीज एटीएम नहीं दे सकते हैं. क्राइटेरिया क्या है? Existing non-bank prepaid issuers and other entities such as individual, professional, non-banking for corporate business correspondents, mobile telephone companies, supermarket chains, companies, real estate, they are owned and controlled by residents and public sector entities may apply to set up a payment. Promoter group should be fit and proper with a sound track record of professional experience or run their business for at least a period of 5 years in order to eligible promote. The main minimum paid up equity capital for a small finance bank shall be 100 crore. Maintain minimum 75% of deposit in government bond and maximum 25% deposit with other scheduled commercial bank. The promoter's minimum initial contribution to the paid up equity capital of such payment banks should at least 40% for the first 5 years for the commencement of. The bank should have a high-powered customer grievance cell to handle customer complaints. Offer internet banks sell mutual fund, insurance, bill payment services. They can enable transfer. Cannot offer challenges, तो इनके मैंने आपको बता ही दिए हैं. अपने डिफरेंस क्या है हम देखेंगे. अब न्यूली प्रपोज बैंक कौन सी है? In addition to recently developed such as payment banks and small finance bank, the Reserve Bank has been exploring the possibility of licensing other differences such as custodian bank and bank concentrating on wholesale and long-term financing. Wholesale bank क्या है? आदित्य बिरला नोवो है, एयरटेल एम कॉमर्स है, चोलामंडलम डिस्ट्रीब्यूशन है, डिपार्टमेंट ऑफ पोस्ट है, फिनो पेटेक है, नेशनल सिक्योरिटी डिपॉजिटरी लिमिटेड है, रिलायंस इंडस्ट्रीज है. ये सब पेमेंट बैंक्स. एक महिंद्रा है. स्मॉल फाइनेंस बैंक में अनु फाइनेंसेस है, दिशा मैक्रोफिन है, इक्विटास होल्डिंग है, जो है सेम है. इंपॉर्टेंट आर्टिकल है इन दोनों का, ये आपको समझ में आना चाहिए। तो अब इंडिया पोस्ट पेमेंट बैंक क्या है, इसको थोड़ा सा देख लेते हैं। अच्छा, इन दोनों में अंतर क्या है? पेमेंट बैंक और स्मॉल बैंक की अगर हम बात करें, डिफरेंसेस क्या है? तो पेमेंट बैंक प्रीपेड कार्ड इशूअर्स हैं, टेलीकॉम कंपनीज हैं, एनबीएफसी हैं, बिजनेस करेस्पॉन्डेंट्स हैं, सुपरमार्केट चेन है, कॉर्पोरेट्स हैं, इंडिविजुअल प्रोफेशनल विद 10 ईयर एक्सपीरियंस इन फाइनेंस, एनबीएफसी माइक्रो फाइनेंस, लोकल एरिया। Have a minimum capital of 100 crore, maintain 75% of deposit in priority sector. Have 20% of banks in unbanked areas, maintain reserve requirement, cap loans to individuals and groups at 10% and 50% of net worth. Have a business correspondent network. Internet banking offer करते हैं, extend large loans, through subsidiaries, cannot deal in sophisticated financial products, except NRI deposit, इस टाइप की चीज। India Post Payment Bank was launched on September 1st, 2018 as a financial service provider launched with the mandate of improving financial inclusion by making banking service available at people's doorstep. It has been incorporated under the Company Act 2013 as a public limited company with 100% Government of India equity under department. It will provide. तो अब इम्पोर्टेंट है कौन कौन सी बैंक्स हैं, मैंने आपको बताया कि ध्यान रखना है। तो इसमें जैसे मैंने आपको पेमेंट बैंक बताया, पेमेंट बैंक में डिपार्टमेंट ऑफ पोस्ट, इंडिया पोस्ट पेमेंट बैंक है, इंपॉर्टेंट है। इट विल टाई अप वेरियस अदर सोशल बैंक, इंश्योरेंस कंपनीज, ये सब चीजें इंपॉर्टेंट है आपके लिए। फाइनली स्मॉल फाइनेंस बैंक क्या है? दे आर नीश बैंक दैट फोकस एंड सर्व द नीड्स ऑफ अ सर्टेन डेमोग्राफिक सेगमेंट ऑफ SBS was recommended by the Nachiket More Committee on Financial Inclusion. A small financial bank. The objective of setting up of the small financial bank will be the further financial inclusion by the provision of saving vehicles, supply of credit to small micro credit units, important है, इसको देखिए आप। Supply of credit to small business units, small and marginal farmers, micro and small industries, micro and small industries, micro and small industries. Some of the operational small finance in India are Ujjivan SFC, Janlakshmi SFC, Kutas, EUFFC, Capital. What can they do? Take a small deposit and disburse loans. Distribute mutual fund insurance product under a simple third party financial product. Then 75% of their total adjusted net bank credit to the priority sector. Maximize loan signed between 10% capital fund to a single borrower, 15% to a group. Maximum 50% of loans should be up to 50. What can they cannot do? Lend to big corporates and groups. Cannot open branches with prior RBI approval for first 5 years. Other financial activities of the promoter must not mingle with the bank. It cannot set up subsidiary to undertake non-banking financial services activity. Cannot be a business correspondent of any bank. What is the business correspondent of any bank? जो SFC थी इसकी सिफारिश कितने की थी? SFC इसकी सिफारिश तो नचकेता मोर कमेटी ने की थी ऑन फाइनेंशियल इंक्लूजन। यहाँ पेमेंट बैंक में लिखा है उषा थ्रोट सेलेक्टेड बाय नचकेता मोर, नचकेत मोर थ्रोट। ठीक है। बिजनेस करस्पॉन्डेंट ऑफ बैंक का क्या मतलब होता है, इसको समझने। अब 2 लाख रुपए पर पर्सन हो गया पेमेंट बैंक में. दीज बैंक्स आर अनेबल टू प्रोवाइड लोन्स और क्रेडिट कार्ड. बैंक ऑफ दीज टाइप्स कैन हैंडल. ठीक है. बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट है भाई. तो बिजनेस करस्पॉन्डेंट ऑफ ए बैंक The business correspondent are bank representatives. They help villagers to open bank account. Business correspondent get commission from bank for every new bank account opening. Every transactions made by them, every loan application process, deposit money, take money. तो सबके business correspondent का मतलब BCs and BF can refer clients. Business correspondent अलग होते हैं और business facilitators अलग होते हैं. दोनों अलग अलग हैं. Or intermediaries, business correspondent, business associate to expand their outreach. According to the guidelines, while the BCs are permitted to carry out transactions on behalf of the bank agents, the BF can refer clients, pursue the client's proposal, facilitate the bank to carry out transactions, but cannot transact on behalf of the bank. Bank operates a number of channels through which they deliver financial services, bank branches, ATM, internet banking, the traditional channel. The business correspondent option offer a new channel through which banks can extend services. The guidelines are written in a way which require a bank to be involved and the ultimate provider of service. While RBI has oversight and regulatory responsibility for the BC banking channel as part of the regulatory regime, the principal banks are responsible for the act of their company. तो एडवांटेजेस तो पता है हमको. ठीक है. बेटर क्वालिटी डेस्क डोर स्टॉप बैंकिंग है. Business correspondent Brazil से start. Most important channel to receive bill payment and services from the government. They become the main payment channel for the no income public. 2000, 1600 out of 15 cities have no banking services. In 2003, no Brazilian cities without banking services. And more than 15 million new bank accounts have been opened through the correspondent model. The regulatory environment and proactiveness of the central bank, evolution of regulation. Brazilian experience है business correspondent. कस्टोडियन बैंक्स बनाने की बात की जा रही है. होलसेल बैंक बनाने की बात की जा रही है. नॉन शेड्यूल्ड बैंक्स में सबसे इंपॉर्टेंट है लोकल एरिया बैंक. अब इसमें डेवलपमेंट बैंक्स में वो भी देख लेते हैं. They were set up as per the government of India scheme announced in 1996. The intention to the government was to set up a new private local banks with jurisdiction over 2 or 3 contiguous districts. The objective of establishing the local area banks was to enable mobilization of rural savings by local institutions and make them available for investment in local area. There are only 4 local area banks in India and the following non-scheduled banks. Coastal Local Area Bank in Vijayawada, Andhra. तो लोकल एरिया बैंक भी इंपॉर्टेंट है. इसको भी आपको देखना है कि लोकल एरिया बैंक्स क्या हैं. लोकल एरिया बैंक्स भी इंपॉर्टेंट. तो लोकल एरिया बैंक्स वाज सेटअप एज पर द गवर्नमेंट ऑफ इंडिया स्कीम 19 अगस्त 96. तो लगभग वही चीजें हैं. की फीचर्स क्या है? ईच लोकल एरिया बैंक इज रजिस्टर्ड एज अ पब्लिक लिमिटेड कंपनी अंडर द कंपनी एक्ट 1956. हाउएवर दे आर licensed under the banking regulation act 1949. लोकल एरिया बैंक फंक्शंस क्या है? कैन डू ऑल नॉर्मल बैंकिंग बिजनेस बट द मेजर फंक्शन वाज टू फाइनेंस एग्रीकल्चर एंड लाइट एक्टिविटी. करंट फंक्शनिंग एक कोस्टल लोकल एरिया बैंक है, कैपिटल लोकल एरिया बैंक है, कृष्णा भीमा समृद्धि लोकल एरिया बैंक है और सुभद्रा लोकल एरिया बैंक कोल्हापुर में है. Further, a South Gujarat local area bank was established in 2000 with the headquarters in Navasin, Gujarat. This bank failed to maintain CR and SLR and suffered net loss in consecutive years. Its promoters were bound to be involved in scams. Consequently, this bank was merged with Bank of Baroda in 2004. Further, Burma local area bank, Vinayak local area bank limited, Sikar in Rajasthan was established in 2000. But RBI cancelled as of 2002 due to major irregularities. Local area bank clear है. Local area bank में कोई doubt नहीं. Now, what are cooperative banks? तो एक बार दोबारा देख लेते हैं। कोऑपरेटिव बैंक्स में अलग अलग तरीके के बैंक्स हैं। रूरल कोऑपरेटिव बैंक्स हैं, लॉन्ग टर्म कोऑपरेटिव बैंक्स हैं, इसमें शॉर्ट टर्म कोऑपरेटिव जो अर्बन कोऑपरेटिव बैंक्स हैं, रूरल कोऑपरेटिव बैंक्स आर द ओल्डेस्ट। इसमें लैंड डेवलपमेंट। अब लैंड डेवलपमेंट बैंक्स क्या हैं, इसको समझने का प्रयास करते हैं। दे प्रोवाइड लॉन्ग टर्म लोन्स टू द एग्रीकल्चरिस्ट फॉर द permanent improvement of land and provide for the repayment of loans in easy annual or semi-annual installments spread over a number of years. The land development banks, जो RRBs हैं, they are regulated by RBI and supervised by NABARD, और RRBs are regulated by SIDBI. इसमें थोड़ा कंफ्यूजन है भाई। जो RRBs हैं, रीजनल रूरल बैंक्स, आर रेगुलेटेड बाई जो रीजनल रूरल बैंक्स हैं, प्रथमा ग्रामीण बैंक, एक चीज थोड़ा सा ना इसमें गड़बड़ है अगर हम देखें तो। चलो कोई बात नहीं। लैंड डेवलपमेंट बैंक्स यहां भी बताया, दे प्रोवाइड लॉन्ग टर्म लोन्स। लैंड डेवलपमेंट बैंक, लैंड डेवलपमेंट बैंक्स क्या है इसके बारे में आपको पता होना चाहिए। कुछ चीजें हैं जो आपको बहुत ही इंपॉर्टेंट तरीके से ध्यान रखनी है। तो लैंड डेवलपमेंट बैंक्स यूपीए यूपीएससी में इस टाइप के सवाल लगातार आपसे पूछे जाते हैं। लैंड डेवलपमेंट बैंक, दीज आर कोऑपरेटिव इंस्टीट्यूशन, all are registered under Cooperative Society Act in a strict sense. However, they were semi-cooperatives. In fact, they are limited liability association of agriculture borrowers, as their members have limited liability. Important है। They are quasi-commercial type. Although they are registered under the Cooperative Society Act, they are association of borrowers as well as non-borrowers organized under principal limited liability. The working capital of LDBs are raised from share capital, deposits and debentures, and borrowing from State Bank of India, Commercial Bank and the state cooperative banks. However, large part of their fund are raised through long-term debentures. The debentures can be issued only by the Central Land Development Bank and not the Primary Land Development Bank. Under its federal structure, the LDB consists of two tier institutions: the Central Land Development Bank at the state level and Primary Land Development Bank at the local level. उनकी ब्रांचेज होंगी तालुका लेवल पे, ये इंपॉर्टेंट है। अंडर द फार्म सेक्टर द लॉन्ग टर्म लोन्स आर एडवांस फॉर विच ऑफ द फॉलोइंग पर्पस। तो जवाब सी है, फॉर डिगिंग ऑफ वेल्स, फॉर एस्टेब्लिशमेंट ऑफ स्प्रिंग एंड एग्रीकल्चर, फॉर लैंड रिक्लेमेशन, नॉट फॉर विलेज एंड कॉटेज इंडस्ट्री। तो सिर्फ फार्मिंग को लोन दिया जाता है, इसका आपको ध्यान रखना, फार्मिंग को लोन। Now, what are urban cooperatives bank? This is very important. Urban cooperative bank. ठीक है, तो साथ साथ पढ़ते रहिए आप। तो व्हाट आर अर्बन कोऑपरेटिव्स बैंक्स, इसको आपको ध्यान रखना है। अर्बन कोऑपरेटिव्स बैंक्स Primary cooperative banks are referred to as urban cooperative banks, cater to the financial needs of customers in urban and semi-urban areas. UCBs are primarily registered as cooperative societies and under the provisions of either the State Cooperative Society Act of State concerned with the Multi-State Cooperative Society 2002, if the area of operation of the bank extends beyond the boundaries of one state. The sector is heterogeneous in character with uneven geographic spread of the banks. While many of them are unit banks without any branch network, some of them are large in size and operating more than one state. Regulation. The UCB in India is under dual regulation by the Reserve Bank of India (RBI) and the Registrar of Cooperatives. Banking operations are regulated and supervised by RBI, which lays down their capital adequacy, risk control, lending norms, issuing license, new branches. They are governed under two laws, namely the Banking Regulation Act and Banking Laws Cooperative Society Act 1955. RBI has also developmental functions like refinancing facilities to urban cooperatives. Government registration and management related activities are governed by the Registrar of Cooperative Banks in of UCBs operating is single state and central RC in case of multi state. सिग्निफिकेंस देख लेंगे अर्बन कोऑपरेटिव बैंक्स पे। अब जो क्वेश्चन पूछा गया है अर्बन कोऑपरेटिव बैंक्स पे यूपीएससी 2022 में, उस सवाल को देखते हैं। यूपीएससी क्वेश्चन प्रीलिम्स 2021 अर्बन डेवलपमेंट बैंक। अच्छा सवाल पूछा गया है और इस सवाल को देखना प्रयास करें। अर्बन डेवलपमेंट बैंक का सवाल बताइए कि सवाल क्या था। बताइए भाई। तो लोकल एरिया डेवलपमेंट पे सवाल तो आया था अर्बन बैंक्स पे। का जवाब दीजिए। With respect to the urban cooperative banks in India, consider the following statement. So, urban cooperative banks are referred to as urban cooperative bank cater to the financial need of customers, and they are registered under dual regulation by the Reserve Bank of India and Registrar of Cooperative Societies. Banking regulation are regulated supervised which lays down the capital adequacy. They are governed under two laws, namely the Banking Regulation Act 1949 and Banking Laws Cooperative Act 1155. RBI also developmental functions like financial urban government registration and management related activities are governed up to the registrar of cooperative societies in case of UCCs operating in single state and RCs. So they are supervised and regulated by local boards set up by the स्टेट गवर्नमेंट। तो ये ऑप्शन तो गलत है। अगर हम अर्बन कोऑपरेटिव बैंक की बात करें, अगर हम अर्बन कोऑपरेटिव बैंक की बात करें तो रिवाइज द सुपरवाइजरी फ्रेम। Cooperative are distinct from commercial banks or born out from the concept of cooperative credit societies. Commercial banks ठीक है, Symbolic Mercantile Cooperative Bank Limited was the first urban cooperative bank to be granted in pursuit personal liability under small financial. They moved RBI and announced a scheme for voluntary taxation in 2018. स्मॉल फाइनेंसिंग बैंक में कन्वर्ट भी हो रहे हैं कुछ। जो अर्बन फाइनेंशियल बैंक्स हैं दे आर रेगुलेटेड बाय, तो यहां से आप इस चीज को अर्बन फाइनेंशियल बैंक को देख सकते हैं। All cooperatives, urban cooperatives, rural cooperatives, scheduled, non-scheduled, KCs, DCBs, इश्यूज देखिए भाई अर्बन कोऑपरेटिव बैंक्स। हम्म, तो इम्पोर्टेंट है। एनबीआई। अब इसके बाद आ जाओ नॉन बैंकिंग फाइनेंशियल इंस्टीट्यूट। इतने ही बैंक्स हैं जो आपको देखने हैं, पर इतने बैंक आप प्रॉपरली देख लोगे तो डेफिनेटली आप सवाल लगा ले जाओगे। इतनी चीजें हैं जो आपको यहाँ पे देखनी है, बैंकिंग में कौन कौन सी पे जो कुछ चीजें जो मुझे लग रही हैं और देखनी चाहिए, पेमेंट बैंक से सब, भीम ऐप, इन सब चीजों को थोड़ा समझेंगे। लेकिन एनबी नॉन बैंकिंग फाइनेंशियल इंस्टीट्यूशंस को देख लेते हैं। नॉन बैंकिंग फाइनेंशियल इंस्टीट्यूट कौन से हैं? नॉन बैंकिंग फाइनेंशियल इंस्टीट्यूशंस, डेवलपमेंट बैंक कौन सी हैं? इंडिया बैंकिंग पॉलिसी, नरसिम्हन कमेटी, प्रोविजनिंग एनपीए क्राइसिस, और बाद में तो ढेर सारी चीजें हैं, लेकिन इतना हो नहीं पाएगा। ये तो बाकी हम लोग इसको कल भी कंटिन्यू रखेंगे। स्विफ्ट नॉर्म्स क्या है, बैंकिंग रेगुलेशंस क्या है, मर्जर क्या है, सेल्फ हेल्प ग्रुप एंड बैंक लिंकेज, इस टाइप की बहुत सारी चीजें जो हैं लगातार चल रही हैं। लास्ट में प्रायोरिटी सेक्टर लेंडिंग, इन सब चीजों पे आ जाए। तो इंपॉर्टेंट चीजें हैं, इनको देखिए आप। What are the facilities for beneficiaries can get from the services of? It enables the beneficiary to draw their subsidies and focus security benefits the benefit to rural area to make deposits and withdrawal. तो जो डिपॉजिट्स हैं वो बैंक की एसेट नहीं है, बैंक की लायबिलिटी है। So what is the difference between non-banking financial institutions? They cannot engage the acquisition of securities issued by government. एनबीएफसी देख लेते हैं, एनबीएफसी के हैं। दे आर क्लासिफाइड एज ऑल इंडिया फाइनेंशियल इंस्टीट्यूशन, प्राइमरी डीलर्स, एनबीएफसीज एंड क्रेडिट इंफॉर्मेशन कंपनीज. All India financial institutions constitute institutional mechanism interested with providing sector-specific long-term financing. Currently, there are 5 AFIs, are also called Development Financial Institution, regulated and supervised by RBI. They are Exim banks. Dot dot dot. Important चीज है, इसको आपको समझना पड़ेगा. What are all India financial institutions? They are all India financial institutions. It is very important. What is all India financial institutions? इसको आप थोड़ा सा ध्यान में आपको रखना पड़ेगा. ये ऑल इंडिया फाइनेंशियल इंस्टीट्यूशंस कौन से हैं? तो ऑल इंडिया फाइनेंशियल इंस्टीट्यूट, इसमें एग्जिम बैंक है, एक्सपोर्ट इंपोर्ट बैंक है. 1982 इट वाज एस्टैब्लिश्ड इन 1982 अंडर एन एक्ट ऑफ पार्लियामेंट एज द अपेक्स फाइनेंशियल इंस्टीट्यूशन फॉर फाइनेंसिंग, फैसिलिटेटिंग एंड प्रमोटिंग इंडियाज इंटरनेशनल ट्रेड. इट primarily लीड्स फॉर एक्सपोर्ट फ्रॉम इंडिया इंक्लूडिंग. यार एक चीज थोड़ा सा आप लोग इस पर ध्यान से समझिए, ठीक है? स्टेट गवर्नमेंट ट्रेजरी बिल जारी नहीं करती हैं. स्टेट गवर्नमेंट can state government issue treasury bills in India? इसका जवाब क्या होगा? In India, the central government issues both treasury bills and bonds or dated securities, while the state government issues only bond or dated securities, which are called the state development loans. ये इंपॉर्टेंट है, आपको ध्यान रखना है, ठीक है? ट्रेजरी बिल्स, कैश मैनेजमेंट बिल. तो ट्रेजरी बिल में आपको ध्यान रखना है कि ट्रेजरी बिल जो है, कि ट्रेजरी बिल स्टेट गवर्नमेंट जारी नहीं करते हैं. तो major players of the market includes commercial banks and PDs, besides institutional investors like insurance companies. PDs play an important role at market and GSEC market. A market maker provides firm to base quote in the market, both buy and sell executable quotes for the concerned securities. Other participants include cooperative banks, regional rural banks, provident pension fund, foreign portfolio investors are allowed to participate in the GSEC market, which quantitative limit prescribed from time to time. Corporates also buy and sell the GSEC to manage their overall portfolio. What are the do's and don'ts prescribed by RBI for cooperative banks dealing in GSEC? Open market operations are the market operations conducted by RBI by way of sale, purchase of government securities to the market with an objective to adjust the rupee liquidity conditions in the market on a durable basis. When the RBI feels there is excess liquidity in the market, वो buy कर लेती है, sell कर लेती है. Public debt office of RBI act as a registry and central depository for GSEC. They may be held by the investors either as physical stock or in dematerialized form. From 2002, it is mandatory for RBI representatives to hold and transfer in dematerialized form. Physical form, पहले रखते थे. So, in active secondary market in GSEC, the securities can be bought, sold in the secondary market either through negotiable dealing system, order matching, anonymous online trading, or through over the counter and reported on NSDOM web stock exchange. Gift account holder have been gifted indirectly. Over the counter क्या है? In the GSEC market, the participant who want to buy or sell a GSEC may contact a bank, PD, financial institution either directly or through a broker registered and negotiate price and quantity of security. The negotiations are usually done on telephone. The deal must be struck if the both agree on the amount and rate. In case of a buyer like an UCB wishing to buy a security, the banker's dealer ... ठीक है, ये चीजें मैंने आपको बता दी हैं, ये चीजें आसान हैं. ये इंपॉर्टेंट है भाई, ये आपको पता। स्टेट गवर्नमेंट जिसे नहीं कर। अब कैन एन इंडिविजुअल बाई ट्रेजरी बिल इन इंडिया? तो आप ये बताइए कि क्या कोई इंडिविजुअल कैन नाउ डायरेक्टली परचेज ट्रेजरी बिल? आरबीआई रिटेल डायरेक्ट स्कीम आ गई है। अब इंडिविजुअल कैन नाउ डायरेक्टली परचेज ट्रेजरी बिल, डेटेड सिक्योरिटीज, सॉवरेन गोल्ड बॉन्ड एंड स्टेट डेवलपमेंट लोन्स for primary as well as secondary markets thanks to the RBI retail direct scheme launched by Prime Minister Narendra Modi on Friday. तो रिटेल डायरेक्ट स्कीम है, ये इंपॉर्टेंट चीज है, इसको हमें समझना पड़ेगा। इंडिविजुअल खरीद सकते हैं। एज पर द स्कीम, रिटेल इन्वेस्टर्स will have the facility to open an online retail gilt account (RDG) account with the Reserve Bank of India. The account can be linked to their saving bank account. The RGT account of individual can be used to participate in the issuance of government securities and secondary market operations through the scheme-based NDS-OM. NDS-OM is scheme-based electronic anonymous order matching system for secondary market trading in government securities owned by RBI. Is currently open only to institutions like banks, primary dealer, insurance companies, and mutual funds. Earlier in the day, the RBI retail direct scheme was launched in virtual mode by Prime Minister Narendra Modi. तो अब जो रिटेल डायरेक्ट इन्वेस्टर्स हैं, नाउ दे विल हैव एन ऑनलाइन फैसिलिटी टू गिफ्ट गवर्नमेंट सिक्योरिटीज टू अदर रिटेल डायरेक्ट इन्वेस्टर्स। पेमेंट डायरेक्टली हो जाएगा, तो नो फी विल बी चार्ज फॉर फैसिलिटी प्रोवाइडेड अंडर द स्कीम। और ये बहुत ही महत्वपूर्ण स्कीम है, इसको आपको ध्यान देना है। ठीक है बेटा, तो इतनी चीजें इंपॉर्टेंट हैं। एक बात समझ में आ गई कि ट्रेजरेबल जरोधा, जरोधा पे आप ट्रेजरेबल खरीद सकते हो। अब देखो काफी चीजें आपको धीरे धीरे क्लियर हो रही हैं। ठीक है, तो चलो ये बात समझ में आ गई हमारे। अब ऑल इंडिया फाइनेंशियल इंस्टीट्यूशंस क्या है? ऑल इंडिया फाइनेंशियल इंस्टीट्यूशंस कॉन्स्टिट्यूट ऑल इंडिया फाइनेंशियल इंस्टीट्यूशंस। अच्छा, एक चीज और भी है, डिफरेंस बिटवीन बैंक्स एंड नॉन बैंकिंग फाइनेंशियल इंटरमीडिएटरी। इनमें डिफरेंस क्या है बैंक्स में और इनके लिए? तो चलो इसको हम लोग देख लेंगे, क्या आसान। तो हाँ बेटा, बोलो बोलो बोलो, आगे देखो। All India Financial Institute constitute institutional mechanism interested with providing sector-specific long-term financing. Currently, there are 5 AIFIs, also called Developmental Financial Institutions, regulated and supervised by RBI. They are Exim Bank, NABARD, NHB, SIDBI, and Mudra. Exim Bank बता दिया, NABARD, it is an apex development and specialized bank established in 1982 by an act by the Parliament of India. Its main focus is to uplift rural India by increasing the credit for the elevation of agriculture and rural non-farm sectors. एग्रीकल्चर एंड रूरल नॉन फार्म सेक्टर्स, ये इंपॉर्टेंट चीज है, इनको समझने का प्रयास करिएगा। ठीक है, तो चलो अब अगला स्टार्ट करते हैं हम। ठीक है, तो 2 मिनट का आप लोग, चलो हम लोग स्टार्ट करते हैं। नाबार्ड के बारे में बात कर रहे थे। RIFT मैनेजेस एसएसबी, प्रोवाइड्स क्रेडिट फॉर द प्रमोशन ऑफ एग्रीकल्चर, रिफाइनेंस। ठीक है, तो यहां तक आपको क्लियर होना चाहिए। यहां तक कोई डाउट हो तो बताइए। अगर यहां तक कोई भी डाउट है तो आप बता सकते हैं। यहां तक कोई भी डाउट हो तो बताइए भाई। ठीक है, चलिए तो नाबार्ड की बात कर लेते हैं। नाबार्ड को डिटेल में पढ़ लेते हैं। नाबार्ड रेगुलेट्स कोऑपरेटिव बैंक्स एंड RRBs। तो एज ए कोऑर्डिनेटर, सुपरवाइजर, Rural Infrastructure Development Fund Management SSCs, SBs having shortfall in their PSL quota had to contribute the shortfall amount to RIDF. तो SCB जो हैं, स्टेट कोऑपरेटिव बैंक, हैविंग शॉर्टफॉल इन देयर PSL quota had to contribute the shortfall amount offers training and research facilities of banks, cooperatives in matter of rural development. तो नाबार्ड इंपॉर्टेंट है, इसको देख लीजिएगा एक बार आप, इससे सवाल आता है। NHB क्या है? नेशनल हाउसिंग बैंक, 1998 गवर्नमेंट 100% ओनर है। NHB इज एन ऑल इंडिया फाइनेंशियल इंस्टीट्यूशन। इसका कैमरा कुछ गड़बड़ है, हिल जाता है, इससे हिलाओ मत कैमरा है। NHB is an all India financial institution set up in 1988 under the National Housing Bank Act 1987. It is an apex agency established to operate as a principal agency to promote housing finance institutions both at local and regional levels and to provide financial and other support incidental to such institutions and for matters connected there. Functions: Apex institution for housing finance in India. Earlier, it regulated the activities of housing finance companies, but since 2019, RBI regulates housing finance companies. Finance to banks and NBFC for housing projects. Does not extend direct credit at individual level, but extend indirect financial assistance by way of refinance. Bring Rigidex index. Rigidex index लेके आता इधर बोला जाए. Bring Rigidex index. Rigidex index लेके आता है. कैमरा मत हिलाओ भाई. So in April 2019, RBI sold its entire stake in the National Bank and National Housing Bank. The decision to divest the entire stake was taken based on the recommendation of Second Assessment Committee. The government now holds 100% stake in both NHB and NABARD. Fact क्या है? The wholesale financing role of NHB will get strengthened with the transfer of ownership to the government. SIDBI क्या है? SIDBI के ओनर कौन कौन से हैं? SBI, LIC, IDBI, other PSB and public sector insurance company. Manages SCFD, Small Enterprise Development Fund. The foreign bank having shortfall in leading to stipulated priority sector target, sub-target will be required to contribute to Small Enterprise Development Fund to be set up by the Small Industry Development Bank of India. हिल जा रहा है कैमरा बार बार. ओनर इसका याद रखिएगा, तो सिडबी का मैनेजेज एचडीएफसी, तो सिडबी act as principal financial institution for the promotion, financing and management sector. It acts as a refinancing institution to financial institution for lending to MSME. मुद्रा बैंक इंपॉर्टेंट है। तो मुद्रा बैंक क्या है, इसको एक बार समझ लेते हैं। मुद्रा बैंक क्या है, क्योंकि इंपॉर्टेंट है मुद्रा। देखिए मैंने सारे करके आपको बता दिए, अब आपको इन सबको समझना है। मुद्रा बैंक, तो मुद्रा और माइक्रो यूनिट डेवलपमेंट एंड रीफाइनेंसिंग एजेंसी लिमिटेड, माइक्रो यूनिट डेवलपमेंट एंड रीफाइनेंसिंग एजेंसी, the government created development and financial agency aim to give refinancing and several development. So micro unit enterprises its primary responsibility is provide funding to nearly 5.8 crore non-corporate small business sector units of the country through various last mile financial institutions like bank, NFC and MF. The micro enterprises or non-corporate small business sector are disadvantaged and disintegrated tiny entities that influence the lives of around 50 crore people. Their growth performance brings momentum in economic growth. According to government estimates, more than 90% of the NCSB sector does not have access to formal sources to provide finance. Functioning of mudra kya hai? The core functioning of mudra is refinancing. It will provide refinancing to last mile finances such as non-banking financial companies, societies, trust, cooperative societies, small banks, scheduled commerce, regional loan banks. It give loans to micro small business engaged in trading and services activity. Mudra was also partnered with state regional level financial intermediate to provide finance to last mile finances of small micro business enterprise. The PMMY scheme was launched in April 2015 with the objective to refinance collateral-free loans given to the lender of small borrowers. The scheme, which has a corpus of 20,000 crore, can lend between 1,000 and 10 lakh. Bank and MFI can draw refinance under the Mudra scheme for becoming member lending. Mudra loans are available for non-agriculture activity up to Rs 1 lakh and activities allied to agriculture such as dairy, poultry, beekeeping are also covered. Mudra unique feature includes a Mudra card which permits working capital through ATM and card machine. There are three types of loans: 50,000, 50,000 to 5 lakh and Tarun 5 lakh. Objective of the scheme kya hai? Fund the unfunded, those being a non-farm activity business plan like manufacturing, processing, trading or servicing sector, but without enough capital to invest can take loan. Promote financial institutions inclusion with the aim to reach the last mile credit delivery to micro business taking the help of the technology solutions. It further adds to the vision of financial reduce jobless economic growth. Providing micro enterprises with credit facilities will help generate employment sources and an overall increasing integrate to informal economy, informal sector. It will help in growing tax base at income from the informal sector or non-tax. Bank to review Mudra Loan Bank. The Finance Ministry asked the banks to review all loans sanctioned under the Pradhan Mantri Mudra Yojana (PMMY) or Mudra Loan Scheme, as the non-performing asset have crossed around 11,000 crore with 3 years of the launch of the scheme. The raising NPA as a matter of causes of the crisis. In order to push the scheme, there had been an overemphasis on banks to meet loan disbursement. The race to meet the target, the credential of loan seekers were not being properly verified, and in many instances, loans were being given without any collateral security, making it difficult for the bank. So now the second is primary dealers. They are registered entities with RBI who have the license to purchase and sell government security. It is by government security directly from the RBI in the primary market, aiming to resell into their other buyers in the secondary market. There are 7 standard PTs and 30 banks authorized to undertake PT business. Credit Information Company, it is an independent and third-party institution that collects financial data regarding loans, credit card, and more about individuals and shares with the members. Banks, non-banking financial institutions are usually the customers of Credit Information Company. The credit card company collects financial information about all those individuals and form a credit report based on their financial history. The credit report plays a very important role as it helps banks and other financial institutions determine the credit worthiness of an individual applying for a loan or credit card with them. So these are basically non-banking financial institutions, credit information companies. Now NBFC. There are financial institutions registered under the Company Act, engage into several non-banking business like leasing, microfinance, chit fund, gold loans, etc. These entities are not allowed to offer financial products and services like banks. Housing finance companies, market banking companies, stock exchanges, companies engaged in the business of stock broking, sub-broking, venture capital fund companies, nidhi companies, insurance companies, chit fund companies, and NBFCs. Difference between bank and NBFC: unlike the banks, the NBFC cannot hold a banking license. NBFC is incorporated under the Companies Act, while the banks are registered under the Banking Regulation Act 1949. NBFCs are not allowed to accept depositors which are repayable on demand, whereas banks can accept demand depositors. Few NBFC can accept time depositors. They are called deposit-taking NBFC. The NBFC's foreign investment up to 100% are allowed, whereas in case of private sector banks, foreign investment cannot be more than 74%. NBFC cannot issue a check drawn on themselves as they are not part of RBI settlement system. Banks are an integral part of the payment and settlement cycle, where NBFC are not part of it. Demand draft cannot be issued by NBFC. Deposit insurance facilities allowed to depositors of banks by deposit insurance and credit guarantee corporation, purchase and authorities available. क्लासिफिकेशन ऑफ एनबीआई, तो इसमें कुछ हैं जो रेगुलेटेड बाय आरबीआई हैं, जैसे इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर फाइनेंस कंपनी, पावरबॉन्ड, आईडीएफसी, लोन कंपनी, मुथूट गोल्ड, मन्नापुरम गोल्ड, हाउसिंग फाइनेंस कंपनी, एवरेज मनी फॉर्म, वैरायटी ऑफ सोर्सेज लेंड फ्रॉम होम लोन्स जैसे डीएचएफएल, मुथूट हाउसिंग फाइनेंस, इंडिया बुल्स, आरबीआई रेगुलेट्स. Other than RBI, insurance company take premium, invest in share bonds, LIC, Bajaj Alliance, Insurance Regulator, ARDA is the regulator. Stockbrokers, mutual fund, uncommissioned by selling bank shares, India Bulls, Sher Khan, ICCI Direct, SEBI regulates them. Investment bank, Western, helps in mergers, acquisition, wealth management, and high-profile clients, जैसे मुकेश अंबानी, underwriters. हाँ देखिए बहुत हाँ बेटा, हाँ हाँ मैं समझ रहा हूँ, मैं इसको धीरे धीरे तुम्हें दोबारा बता दूंगा, घबराओ. इसके बाद मर्चेंट बैंक्स हैं, सेम एज इन्वेस्टमेंट बैंक्स, दे इंडल्ज इन अंडरराइटिंग, कॉर्पोरेट एडवाइजिंग, लेंड मनी टू ए कंपनी बाय बाइंग इट्स शेयर्स, मॉर्गन स्टैनली हो गया, केनरा बैंक हो गया, एसबीआई कैपिटल हो गया, SEBI regulates them. Venture capital fund, finance company by purchasing IFC, SEBI regulates them. Chit companies are defined in the Chit Fund Act 1982 and regulated by state government. Nidhi company, it is a type of club, borrow money from members and lend it among the members. Example, South Madras Benefit Fund, regulated by the Ministry of Corporate Affairs. Pension fund, they provide pension fund for people, pension, regulatory and ... इन चीजों को थोड़ा और समझ लेते हैं कि निधि बैंक क्या है, ये थोड़ा सा इंपॉर्टेंट चीज है. इन्वेस्टमेंट बैंक हो गया, ठीक है, मर्चेंट बैंक हो गया, वेंचर कैपिटल फंड हो गया, चिट कंपनीज हो गया, निधि कंपनीज. निधि कंपनीज निधि कंपनीज क्या है, ये बताइए मुझे, आप तो सवाल आएगा इस. तो अंदर निधि रूल्स 2014, Nidhi is a company which has been incorporated as a Nidhi with the object of cultivating the habit of thrift and saving on its members, receiving deposits from and lending to its members only for their mutual benefit. It is a company registered under the Companies Act 2013, works on the principle of mutual benefit and has the Ministry of. Nidhi company is a class of non-banking financial company and Reserve Bank of India has power to issue directions. However, since these Nidhi deal with their shareholders members only, RBI has exempted them from the core provision of RBI Act and other directions given to NBFC. तो निधि कंपनी कुछ नहीं, आपस के लोगों के लिए है. Significance of NBFC. Credit in this company is vastly under penetrated and business needs constant capital to grow. NBFC with use of technology and innovation, wide reach, customized products, smart credit underwriting. What are underwriters? Underwriters क्या होते हैं? What are underwriters बताइए भाई, underwriters क्या होते हैं? बताइए underwriters क्या होते हैं? Who are underwriters? Underwriters are found in banking. So what are underwriting? Underwriting is one of the most important functions in the financial world, wherein an individual or an institution undertakes the risk associated with a venture, an investment, or a loan in lieu of a premium. Underwriters are found in banking, insurance, and stock market. The name underwriting came about the practice of having risk takers to write their name before the total risk that he undertakes in return for a specified premium in the early stages of the industrial revolution. ये है भाई underwriters. These are underwriters. अगर दूसरे तरीके से समझें, underwriter is any party that evaluates and assumes another party risk for a fee, which often takes the form of a commission, premium, spread, or interest. Agents and brokers represent both consumer and interest companies, while underwriters work for insurance companies. Underwriters work in many areas of finance, from the insurance industry to marginal lending. Underwriting determines the level of risk for lenders. Underwriters are critical to the mortgage industry, insurance industry, equity market, and common type of debt security trading because of their ability. A book runner is another name for a lead underwriter. अंडरराइटर बेसिकली क्या है? आप शायद अभी तक समझ गए हो कि अंडरराइटर क्या है. और अगर आप समझना चाहो अंडरराइटर, अंडरराइटर is one who does underwriting. A financial organization that handles sale of new securities with a company or municipality wishes to sell in order to raise money. Typically, the underwriters will guarantee subscription to securities, say an issue of security from a company at a stated price, and are under an obligation to purchase security up to the amount that have underwritten. Should be public, not subscribe the issue. The role of underwriter is to evaluate. Underwriting is the process of betting risks, so only calculated risks are taken to protect investors, banks, applicants, and the market in certain financial conditions. Underwriting is the process an investor or institution evaluates, research, quantify a financial risk. The role of an underwriter is to evaluate financial crisis rate and rules for loans of investment. Underwriter work in commercial banking, insurance, investment banking, and medical top loss. Underwriting is determining and quantifying the financial risk of an institution or institution. Typically, the risk is associated with providing loans. Underwriter क्या करेगा? Risk बताएगा भाई. Establish fair rates on loans. Tell the right premium to properly covered and real cost of insuring. So, an underwriting is a professional who assess risk and establishes a stable and fair market for financial transactions. An underwriter does this by approving calculated risk when making decisions. They determine which contract are worth the risk and the rate they will assign to do so. They or their employer make a profit. Examine application for insurance, loan, mortgage, or IPO. Vetting potential borrowers based on their background. ठीक है. अंडर राइटर्स को और अगर आपको समझना है, क्योंकि सवाल आ सकता है अंडर राइटर, ठीक है, चलो बहुत अंडर राइटर। अब एनबीएफसी तो ये हो गए भाई, नॉन बैंकिंग फाइनेंशियल कॉर्पोरेशन। चिट फंड क्या है? A chit fund is a type of saving scheme where a specified number of subscribers contribute. A chit fund is a type of saving scheme where a specified number of subscribers contribute payments in installment over a different period. Each subscriber is entitled to a prize amount determined by lot, auction, or tender depending on the nature of the chit. The prize account is the entire pool of contribution minus a deposit which is distributed as a dividend. With a reported 10,000 chit fund in the country handling over 30,000 crore annually, chit fund proponents maintain that these are an important financial tool. However, these can be misused by its promoters, and there are several instances of people running such Ponzi schemes and then absconding the investors' money. Being part of the concurrent list of the Indian Constitution, both the central and state can frame legislation regarding it. Neither RBI nor SEBI regulate the chit fund business. Under Chit Fund Act 1992, all chit fund companies need to be registered with respective state government. Now, Chit Fund Amendment Bill 2019. The bill makes amendment to the Chit Fund Act 1982, facilitate orderly growth of the chit fund sector, and remove bottleneck being faced by the chit fund industry, thereby enabling greater financial access to people to other financial. Banning of the Unregulated Deposits Scheme Act 2019. The act was introduced as an ordinance in February 2019 and enacted into a law on 31st July 2019 to put in place a mechanism to secure poor depositors investors from Ponzi scheme. What is Ponzi scheme? Ponzi scheme is a fraudulent investigating promising. हाँ हाँ ठीक है, नहीं नहीं, आज इंपॉर्टेंट टॉपिक पढ़ा रहे हैं, इसको कंप्लीट करके ही ऑफ करेंगे, तो बेटा आप लोग देखते रहो, परेशान मत। Ponzi scheme is a fraudulent investing scam promising high rate of return with little risk to investors. It generates returns for early investors by acquiring new investors. They rely on a constant flow of new investment to contribute to provide returns to older investors. When this flow runs out, the scheme falls apart. High rate of return. A major reason for their popularity is that they offer a higher rate of return than conventional form of investing such as post office fixed deposit. एक घंटे का Ponzi scheme over the years have been a menace in the country. Rose Valley, Sarda, IMS Jewels scam in Bengaluru are among the major scams in the recent past. The act covers existing gap in the legislation that had been exploited by various parties to siphon. इसमें 3 लॉ अमेंड किए गए हैं। पहला, रिजर्व बैंक ऑफ इंडिया एक्ट 1934, द एसबी एंड मल्टी स्टेट कोऑपरेटिव सोसाइटीज एक्ट 2002। तो 3 लॉ इसमें अमेंड किए गए, तीनों लॉ इसमें महत्वपूर्ण है जो आपको देखने हैं। ठीक है, मेजर हाइलाइट्स क्या हैं? Competent authority to sell the property and equitably distribute the money realized among the depositors. The court will seek to competent the process within 180 days of being approached by the competent authority. Central database, फिर इसमें offenses and penalties हैं, ये offenses और penalties क्या क्या है? Now there is partial credit guarantee scheme. Okay. The state on NBFC and HFC is seen as a key reason for a slowdown in the country. It has been caused reduced credit flow to small business and कंज्यूमर। वे एड क्या है? The new act basically aims to provide the process of justice after the scam is known. While that is important, what is more important to knit these six things apart? For this, the SEBI and Reserve Bank of India need to be more vigilant. Non-banking financial corporations, classification regulated by RBI, loan company other than RBI, they are not allowed to offer financial products, services like bank. Other financial institutions using several non-banking business, leasing, market fund, gold loans. Indian non-banks are governed by a regulatory purview of RBI. The Security Exchange Board, IRDA, Ministry of Corporate Affairs, and state governments for check from. The commission chaired by farmer B.N. Krishna, also called Financial Sector Legislative Reform Commission, recommended that SEBI and PFA and Development Authority and the Farmer Loan Commission SEBI be merged under one regulator to be called the Unified Finance. The FSSRC commended a strong legal framework added to financial stability and development. बन गया? The FLRC recommended for a strong legal framework added to Financial Stability and Development Council, implementing FSRC recommendation with a more focused scope to the RBI and creating a unified dot. Atmanirbhar Bharat Abhiyan duly noted that NBFC were not getting encouraged resources, especially the one that highly rated. For this reason, 30 crore special liquidity scheme has now been introduced. The investment will be made in both primary and secondary market transactions, buying investment grade papers. Government is trying to enhancing RBI powers. The government is actively considering a proposal from the RBI seeking more powers to improve its regulatory and supervisory functions for non-banking financial companies. Recent defaults and delays in loans repayment by a section of NBFCs have shaken the confidence in the financial market, leading to fears that potential solvency risk of certain companies can be contagious. Liquidity for NBFC. So in the light of recent development, there is a case for having a fresh look at the regulation and supervision. Need of the hour is to have an optimal level of regulation and supervision so that NBFC sector is financially resilient and robust. More powers will enable RBI to close regulatory gaps between banks. The RBI has already reduced the periodicity of the NBFC supervision 12 months from 18 months earlier. तो अब एनबीएफसी की थोड़ी सी भाई सुपरविजन की बात की जा रही थी, देख के बता दूंगा। उसी ले लीजिए आप। ठीक है बेटा, तो यहाँ तक कोई डाउट हो तो बताओ, फिर आगे देखा जाए। ठीक है, यहाँ तक कोई डाउट हो तो बताइए आप। तो डिपॉजिट इंश्योरेंस, अब डेवलपमेंट बैंक्स क्या हैं इसको समझ लेते हैं। व्हाट आर डेवलपमेंट बैंक? इसको समझ लेते हैं डेवलपमेंट बैंक्स क्या है भाई। अगर हम डेवलपमेंट बैंक्स भी इंपॉर्टेंट हैं, जैसे IFCI इज ए फर्स्ट डेवलपमेंट बैंक इन इंडिया. इट स्टार्टेड 1948 टू प्रोवाइड फाइनेंस to medium and large scale industry in India. In 1955, the Bird Bank promoted the ICCI, the parent of the largest private commercial bank in India today, ICCI Bank, as a collaborative effort between the government with majority equity holding India's leading industries with nominal equity on finance large private sector. In 1964, IDBI was set up as an apex body of all developmental financial institutions. After 1991, following the Narasimhan Committee reports on financial sector reform, development funds were disbanded and got converted to commercial banks. The result was a sharp fall in long-term credit from a tenure of 15 years to 5 years. ये भी important है. Recent economic slowdown. For instance, during the recent economic slowdown, development financial institutions played an important counter-cyclical role in many jurisdictions by scaling up their lending operations. Now, history of banking in India. ठीक है, तो 1707 में बैंक ऑफ हिंदुस्तान बना था, 1865 में बैंक ऑफ बड़ौदा, बैंक ऑफ कलकत्ता, ऐसा मैं आपको बता चुका. ठीक है, nationalization of banks in 1969 was a watershed moment. The history of Indian banking. Private banks were nationalized in 1969. Another 6 private banks were nationalized in 19. तो देखते हैं कहीं नेशनलाइजेशन जो हुआ था, रियल स्टोरी बिहाइंड बैंक नेशनलाइजेशन. इसको देखते हैं. 2019 marks 50 year of India's bank nationalization. 19 July 1969. 19 जुलाई 1970. Indira Gandhi, who was both Prime Minister and Finance Minister at the time, decided to nationalize 14 largest private banks. The Empirical Bank already nationalized and renamed as State Bank of India in 1995. The decision pushed 80% of banking assets under the control of state. Third volume of Reserve Bank of India history term nationalized of banks as the single most important decision taken by any government since 1947. Not even the reforms of 1991 in this country. The reason for nationalized banks was the sync the banking sector with the goals of socialism adopted by the Indira Gandhi government. हेलो, तो 1 घंटे में आएंगे क्लास लेने, आके आएंगे. सॉरी, बिटिया का फोन था. लेट में क्लास होती है, सब परेशान हो जाते. ठीक है, तो हम नेशनलाइजेशन की बात कर रहे थे, तो बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट था. RBI history points that the idea to nationalize banks and insurance companies germinated as early in 1948 in an All India Congress Committee report. The insurance sector was nationalized in 1956 with the formation of LIC of India, but the banks has to wait in 1969, barring the case of SBI, which was nationalized in 1955. तो LIC बना दिया था और इसमें इंश्योरेंस सेक्टर को नेशनलाइज कर दिया गया था 1956. इंश्योरेंस सेक्टर को नेशनलाइज कर दिया गया था। इंडियाज पॉलिटिकल ड्रामा इन द 1960 बिफोर बैंक नेशनलाइज बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट है। तो 1955 में किया गया, 1950 LIC बना दी गई, लेकिन बैंक्स नेशनलाइज नहीं की गई। India's political drama deserves several mentions. The RBI history point out that we have Barbie challenge in 1962, followed by Prime Minister Jawaharlal Nehru in 1990. This led to the appointment of Lal Bahadur Shastri as Prime Minister, who soon saw war with Pakistan in 1960. The Shastri died suddenly in 1966, leading to the appointment of Indira Gandhi as Prime Minister. The ruling Indian national caucus was in turmoil. It showed a subsequent election result. Lok Sabha elections of 1967, the Congress seat won 283 seats of the total 520, sharply lower than of 361 of 494 it won in 1960. Further, the party lost in basically 7 regions. Apart from these political events and wars, the 1960 also have two droughts leading to negative GDP growth rate and double-digit inflation. Foreign exchange rate declined. These economic conditions led the government to devalue the rupee from 4.76 per dollar to 7.50 per dollar in 19. Apart from devaluation and export duties were levied on a dozen commodities. बहुत important devaluation किया गया. The tribunal criticized the corners as the center has denied the possibility of devaluation before making. No less than a Congress president at the time, K. Kamraj, dubbed it as to sell out to America. No less than the Congress president at the time, K. Kamraj, dubbed it as sell out to Americans. Prime Minister Indira Gandhi needed a serious instrument to reposition herself as a radical reformer, and she used nationalization of banks to signal this change. The 1960 also saw three RBI governors. HBR Linger was governor from 1957 to 1962. PC Bhattacharya, 67, who oversaw devaluation and droughts. Bhattacharya. LK Jha, who was the governor from 67 to 70, had to manage the bank nationalization. LK Jha. RBI Governor PC Bhattacharya with LK Jha and BN Adalkar, both of them went to be appointed RBI governor. Apart from political and economic factors, there were banking regions as well. There were long-standing criticisms that Indian banks were not willing to provide credit to agriculture. Also, since the private banks were run by big industries, they gave loan to themselves. The director of the top banks also held directors with several other industries leading to conflict. The share of agriculture in credit was 2% in 1951 and remained unchanged in 1960. Whereas the share of industry from 34% to 63%. सोचिए 51 में 34% था इंडस्ट्री, 36% कॉमर्स था, 12% फाइनेंस, 6% था, 2% और यहाँ भी आप देखोगे तो इंडस्ट्री का लोन कंटिन्यूसली बढ़ रहा है, ठीक है, और ये वाला लोन कंटिन्यूसली क्या हो रहा है, कम हो रहा है. We see a similar picture in bank branches as well. Bank has increased branches from around 4,000 in 1950 to 7,000 in 1967, but the share of rural and semi-rural branches remains similar to 61%. The share of urban branches increased from 31% to 39%. 7. ये भी important. So, Morarji Desai, Deputy Prime Minister and Finance Minister in the Indira Gandhi government, tried to find a middle of the road solution and came up with the idea of social control. Under the Banking Laws Amendment Act 1968, the government asked banks to change the profile of directors and prohibited loans to directors and their firms. Banking Laws Amendment Act 1968 में गवर्नमेंट ने बैंक था कि अपने जो डायरेक्टर. The National Credit Council was established, whose task was to align the banking system towards national goal of planning and development. One of the NCC's major goals was to direct bank lending to priority sector. NCC proposed double credit towards this sector. Meanwhile, the banks had a whip that they would eventually be national. While presenting their annual reports, some of them suggested that nationalization was not needed as they oriented towards this. 1967, Homi Modi, chairperson of Central Bank of India, said that there was not a single congruent or economic argument favoring nationalization or social control or bank. Later in May 69, B.C. Patel, chairperson of the same bank, Realizing social control has been implemented, pointing out how the bank was making progress toward rural credit. PFI chairperson of Syndicate Bank, who also chaired the NCC, remarked in 1967 that nationalization of banks is not necessary as the banking industry has not failed to fulfill the objectives and that the government through the Reserve Bank has very vast and effective control over commercial banks. In his later annual statement in 1968, I informed the shareholders how the bank was structured. RBI Governor N.K. Jha was open to social but did not favor nationalism. However, none of these proposals and statement matters at nationalism became inevitable by July 1969. Prime Minister Indira Gandhi raised the issue of nationalization on 12 July 1969, leading to the resignation of Prime Minister Desai on 6 July 1969. Indira Gandhi also took over the finance portfolio. It was not a question of whether, but when will the bank be nationalized. It did not take long as the eventual date was a week away. 12 जुलाई को ये हुआ, 16 जुलाई को उन्होंने इस्तीफा दे दिया, 16 जुलाई को इस्तीफा दे दिया। सोचिए, 12 जुलाई को हुआ, 16 जुलाई को इस्तीफा दे दिया और उसके बाद अगर आप देखोगे तो बैंक को नेशनलाइज कर दिया गया 19 जुलाई। 16 जुलाई के बाद कब नेशनलाइज किया बैंक को? 19 जुलाई। 12 जुलाई घोषणा की, 19 जुलाई कर दिया है। I.G. Patel autobiography, Glimpses of Indian Economic History, provides a thrilling account of how the agenda was carried forward. He was a chief economic advisor, and on July 18, he was asked to make the legislation in a mere 24 hours, which he duly did along the RBI Governor L.K. Jha and Finance Ministry R.K. Seshadri, who were flown in urgently from Bombay. I.G. Patel managed to convince the Prime Minister for nationalizing only the major bank and leave foreign banks out. I.G. Patel's He was the chief economic advisor. D.N. Ghosh, Deputy Secretary, Banking Division and Finance Ministry, also gives a fascinating account of the events in his book No Regret. He, along with P.N. Haskar and Bakshi, spent the eventful night on 17 July preparing the legislation. It was crucial to come up with the banking legislation by 19 July as B.B. Giri, who was acting Prime Minister of Chief Secretary at this time, was to demit office on the next July 20, 1969. And the Lok Sabha was to resume its session on July 21. तो बहुत खतरनाक था, सोचो। 17 जुलाई को करना था क्योंकि 18 जुलाई को वो इस्तीफा देने जा रहे थे। 20 जुलाई को उन्होंने कहा था भैया 20 जुलाई को हम इस्तीफा दे देते हैं। एक्टिंग प्रेसिडेंट थे उस समय, हो गई। The trio figured the top 14 banks and ANZ Greenlands, which was a foreign bank, comprised 85% of deposits. They were also suggestions to nationalize Andhra Bank, which had deposit of Rs 42 crore. Ghosh wrote that he suggested a standardized criteria be adopted for the purpose. So Rs 50 crore deposit was set as a threshold level for nationalization. They also decided to leave out ANZ Greenlands and the foreign banks. Haskar informed the Prime Minister about the 14 banks and leaving out the foreign banks, and she agreed. Ghosh said a million words could not have held the import of Haskar's words to Prime Minister. Ghosh also mentions how a telephone call I.G. Patel agreed to finalize the legislation at RBI Guest House in Delhi, where all the key persons could work in confidence. The banking company acquisition and transfer of undertaking at 1969 laid down the condition of nationalization. The objective was the act to serve better the needs of development of the economy in conformity with national policy and objectives. In her speech on radio, Indira Gandhi reiterated the following words. As early as December 1964, Parliament took the decision to frame out plans and policies with a specific pattern of society, control over the commanding heights of economic necessity, particularly in a poor country when it is extremely difficult to mobilize adequate resources for development. Ajit Patel mentioned that how he added the words commanding heights to link it with past and also signal the more nationalism was. However, the 1969 legislation ran into problems. There were objections over power of the government over the nationalized bank at the compulsory level. This led the Supreme Court to strike down the act on 10th February 1970 while upholding the legislative competence of Parliament. An ordinance was drafted which applied from July 1969 and was passed in Parliament on 14 February 1970. देखो भैया, अप्लाई किया गया बैक डेट से कानून बनाया जा सकता है। The objective of the act was also modified to control the heights of the economy and to meet progressively and to serve better the need of the development of the economy in conformity with the national policy. The article discussed the broad backdrop leading to maintenance license. उसमें बहुत बढ़िया कंडीशन. इसमें इलाहाबाद बैंक थी, बैंक ऑफ बड़ौदा थी, बैंक ऑफ इंडिया थी, सेंट्रल बैंक ऑफ इंडिया थी, केनरा बैंक, पंजाब नेशनल बैंक, यूनाइटेड बैंक. Besides Indira Gandhi, other important posting through the radical decision of P. N. Haskar, Principal Secretary to PM Advisory Economic, P. N. Dharan, K. M. Das. A key role was played by D. N. Ghosh, who was then attached to the banking division of the Ministry of Finance and would go on to become chairman SBI in 1985. Ghost's biography, No Regret, talks about how the move was rushed through from the moment has got a dramatic call on the midnight of July from Haskar to join the team given a task of drafting the ordinance in 24 hours so that acting President B. Gill could sign it the day before demitting office and before Parliament met the next. The country was in the midst of a whirling political activities and nearly buzzed with rumors of a rift in the ranks of the Congress. Not surprisingly, the cabinet decision to nationalize the bank came a day after Finance Minister Morarji Desai, who was opposed to the move, was relieved of his portfolio leading to resignation. What's more, the cabinet decision was followed by the signing of the ordinance by Giri, who was to relinquish office the very next day. That was important because when Giri gone, there was no telling who the next one was to be. Just a week before that, some senior members of the Congress had challenged Indira Gandhi authority by announcing Sanjeeva Reddy as the party presidential candidate. Direct confrontation. Giri, the PM chosen man for the job. Giri subsequently won the election as an independent. Just before that, अब देखो यहाँ पे समझने वाली चीज है कि उधर ये चल रहा था, ठीक है, इधर इस तरीके की कहानी चल रही थी. इंपॉर्टेंट है इसको समझ. यही चीजें होती हैं महत्वपूर्ण, जो समझने वाली होती हैं. तो बच्चे इन चीजों को समझ लेते हैं, वो अच्छा लिखाते हैं. और वह नहीं समझ पाते हैं तो फिर कोई बात ही नहीं. दुनिया चली रही है, आप अच्छे से करिए, पढ़ते रहिए. तो जितनी ज़्यादा मेहनत करेंगे आप उतनी जल्दी आप सेलेक्ट हो जाएंगे. नहीं मेहनत करेंगे नहीं सेलेक्ट हो पाएंगे, बस इतना ही है और कुछ नहीं. इतना ही है और कुछ नहीं. पढ़िए तो जल्दी जल्दी सेलेक्ट हो जाएंगे. कैमरा मत खिलाओ भाई. अब आगे देखें, इसी को समझने का प्रयास करते हैं. Just before week before that, some senior members of the Congress had challenged Indira Gandhi authority. 12 जुलाई को अनाउंस किया था, 16 जुलाई को इस्तीफा दे दिया भाई. For announcing Sanjeev Reddy as the party's presidential candidate in direct confrontation with Giri. After the cabinet had signed on, in the evening, Indira Gandhi addressed the nation on the radio and in a speech drafted by her IG Patel announced the nationalization. whatever the gains for the agriculture sector, the move did help steer India's Indira Gandhi as a champion of the underserved. तो उसके बाद भी 1980 में भी जब इंदिरा गांधी जी दोबारा प्रधानमंत्री बनती हैं तो फिर 6 बैंक को नेशनलाइज कर देती हैं। तो भाई देखो, ये काम तो इंदिरा गांधी ने अच्छा किया। अब ये अच्छा किया है गलत किया, ये बात आपको सोचनी। अच्छा किया है गलत किया है, चीज आपको सोचनी। बहुत ही इंपॉर्टेंट डिसीजन है। अब जैसे इस पे पूछा जा सकता है, जो बैंक का नेशनलाइजेशन हुआ वो सही हुआ या गलत हुआ। अब ये मेंस का सवाल बनेगा। तो मोर हार्म कैसे लेके आए, ये बताइए। हार्म कैसे लेके आए नेशनलाइजेशन भाई, इस आर्टिकल छाप दिया भाई। इंदिरा गांधी बैंक nationalization was a economic failure but a smashing political success. Comment. The 50th anniversary of nationalization of big banks by Prime Minister Indira Gandhi has attracted limited comment. Some critics call it a terrible economic blunder since public sector banks have become a byword of enormous losses, inefficiency, and loans based on phone calls from political masters. Top PSB appointment has sometimes been made to steady bankers who guide backs to them. Defenders of bank research say it has a positive outcome, like spreading banking to rural areas, aiding the green revolution, reducing poverty. It also entered the whole of few industrialists over banks' finance, replacing it with priority sector lending by PSB that directed loans to socially important sectors. The last point was hotly contested by Gandhiji's key opponent Morarji Desai, who said that social aims could equally be achieved by directives to people. The different genre of critics says bank nationalization was really a political plot by Gandhi to split the Congress, help assert her supremacy over the powerful party uh, chicks collectively called the syndicate. There is some merit in this analysis. Yes, they missed the most important reason for Gandhi's action. This was to comfort and cut the Swatanta party, which has emerged as the greatest threat to Congress hegemony since independence. Few people remember or know how large a threat the Swanta party once posed. It was formed in 1957 by C. Rajgopalachari, N. G. Ranga, K. M. Munshi, and other distinguished congressmen who disagreed with Jawaharlal Nehru's socialistic. It quickly attracted princes and jamidars whose large landholding were threatened by Nehru's land reform. It also attracted big businessmen who sought a bona fide of economic control. Nehru castigated the Swadha party as one belonging to the middle ages of lords, castles, and jamidars. In the 1962 election, Swadha party won 18 seats, a decent divide that made it the third largest party in parliament after Congress and Communist Party of India. Then came the debacle of the bar with China, followed by the terrific droughts of 1965-1966, which emptied India's foreign exchange reserve and made it pathetically dependent on US food aid to avoid mass starvation. Anti-incumbency ran high in 1966 election. Congress won only 283 of 520 seats on the party, surged to second place with 44 seats and became the opposition. India had over 500 princely states that agreed to merge with the Indian Union in 1947, with the princely getting handsome privy purse and exemptions from taxation as compensation. Historical traditions mean that the masses in former princely states voted unthinkably for the prince. After all, opposing princes has been called treason for millennia, punishable by death. Some princes fought and won elections without even campaigning. After the 1967 elections, Congress government were toppled by defectors who joined hand with the opposition party to form द काल, संयुक्ता विधायक दल, coalition in Uttar Pradesh, Bihar, Madhya Pradesh, and some other states. It seems possible that same thing would happen in Lok Sabha, where the defection of 22 MPs would have reduced Congress to a minority. As things turn out, they did not happen. But Congress hegemony looked like ending. In the next election, it seemed entirely possibility that the money of big business plus the feudal hold of princes was bring a Sonta-led coalition to power. Indira Gandhi launched a private war against Swatanta in the guise of Garibi Hatao socialism. He attracted Swatanta's two main pillars, the princes and big business. He abolished the privy purse of the princes and made them subject to income and wealth tax, prizing most of them. Some fled abroad to reduce the tax. Gandhi also raised the peak income tax rate to 97.75% plus a wealth tax of 3.5%. This crippled the finances of big business. Peak income tax rate was 97.75%, which is already hit by bank nationalizations. He went on to nationalize several more businesses like coal, general insurance, and copper. Industrialized fierce losses of their companies and cling where they had one road like lines. Both pillars of the Sonta party were smashed, never to recover. Soon after came the emergency of 1955 to 1907. Gandhi threw all opposition leaders in jail, creating a unity among them that never existed before. The Congress O Sonta Party, Jan Sangh Socialist Party merged to form Janata Party. And this won the 1977 election and formed a new government under Morarji Desai, whom Gandhi ousted in 1969 on the issue of bank business. Last, Janata Party soon bickered internally and broke into fragments in less than 3 years. The Sonta fragment was too big to re-emerge as a separate party. Many of its members, such as Jaswant Singh, joined BJP. In economic terms, the nationalization of bank is best described as a failure, or maybe as a dark cloud with some silver lining. But in political terms, it was a slamming success. It smashed Sonta Party so comprehensively that few members that it was once a contender to rule India. तो इस तरीके से इंदिरा गांधी का भाई वो चलता था, ठीक है। तो 1980 में इंदिरा गांधी ने किया, उससे पहले 1969 में 14 बैंक को कर दिया। तो ये सब चीजें थोड़ा सा अगर आप पढ़ते रहोगे तो चीजें अच्छी रहेंगी। एक्चुअली मेजर प्रॉब्लम्स क्या है पब्लिक सेक्टर बैंक से, पहले मुझे ये बताइए, व्हाट आर द मेजर प्रॉब्लम्स। तो चलो इसको फिर हम लोग कल कंटिन्यू करेंगे कि मेजर प्रॉब्लम्स क्या है पब्लिक सेक्टर बैंक, ठीक है। इसको हम लोग कल कंटिन्यू कर लेंगे, कोई बात नहीं भाई, ठीक है। तो आज इतना ही रखते हैं। थैंक यू वेरी मच, आप लोगों ने इतनी जो इकोनॉमिक्स है इसके बेसिक को समझा। और जैसे कि आपने देखा कि मैं बहुत बेसिक चीजें आपको पढ़ा रहा हूँ तो आपके लिए बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट हो जाता है। तो अब देखिए, इस तरीके के लेक्चर्स अगर आप रेगुलर क्लास में देखना चाहते हैं तो आप जो है इसको सब्सक्राइब करिए अनअकैडमी को। मेरा कोड है GS UPSC लाइव। अगर आप मेरे कोड से सब्सक्राइब करेंगे तो आपको 10% का डिस्काउंट मिलेगा। दीज आर अनअकैडमी एडवांटेजेस, एनी टाइम एनीवेयर, लाइव एंड रिकॉर्डेड सेशंस एट योर कन्वीनियंस, Get access to best multiple correspondence courses, structures, pedagogy in sync with the academic calendar, events like workshops, strategy sessions, unlimited quizzes, study material PDF format. विजेता GS पेपर बन के टेस्ट सीरीज चल रही है, इसको आपको ध्यान रखना है। टेस्ट कंडक्टेड एवरी डे एट 10 AM, रैंक 1, 2, 3। दीज आर बैच कोर्सेज। तो अभी ढेर सारे ऑप्शनल कोर्सेज चल रहे हैं, पब्लिक एडमिनिस्ट्रेशन, फिलोसफी, जियोग्राफी, सोशलॉजी, हिस्ट्री, हिंदी लिटरेचर। विजय भव PCS मेंस बैच चल रहे हैं, तो ये बैचेज हो चुके हैं, चल भी रहे हैं, इनकी आप रिकॉर्डेड क्लासेस देख सकते हैं। और 16 तारीख से मैं आपके लिए इंडियन इकोनॉमी का बैच लेके आ रहा हूँ शाम को 8:35 पे। उसके बाद इथिक्स का बैच लेके आ रहा हूँ शाम को 10:05 पे। तो दोनों बैचेज आप जरूर ज्वाइन करिए, 100% आप इन बैचेज को करिए, और डेफिनेटली जब इन बैचेज को करेंगे तो आपको बहुत फायदा होगा। अगर आप अनअकैडमी को सब्सक्राइब करते हैं तो एक ही सब्सक्रिप्शन में आप जितनी भी क्लासेज हैं वो सारी क्लासेस देख सकते हैं। ठीक है बेटा। तो ये सब्सक्रिप्शन फीस है। इसे देखिए तो देखिए, अगर आप 2 महीने के लिए सब्सक्राइब करते हैं, 2 साल के लिए सब्सक्राइब करते हैं, तो आप सिर्फ ₹510 पर महीने पे सब्सक्राइब कर सकते हैं। बहुत ही इंपॉर्टेंट है, इसको देखिए। तो अगर अभी तक आपने इस वीडियो को लाइक, सब्सक्राइब और शेयर नहीं किया है तो लाइक करिए, शेयर करिए, सब्सक्राइब करिए, इस चैनल को सब्सक्राइब करिए, जिससे ऐसे शानदार वीडियो आप लगातार देखते रहे। थैंक यू वेरी मच। लाइक, शेयर एंड सब्सक्राइब दिस वीडियो। थैंक यू वेरी मच। माय कोड इज